Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be diving into a deeply moving historical fiction narrative that really intertwines the lives of three defining World War I poets. We're talking about Siegfried Sassoon, Wilfred Owen, and Isaac Rosenberg. We're going to follow their descent into the mud of 1916, see exactly how they processed just unimaginable trauma, and look at how their words actually managed to outlast the war itself.
Now, our entire journey today is anchored by one single, absolutely crucial truth. The paperwork was always the least true part of the war. We're going to be looking at this stark contrast between the neat, tidy, bureaucratic records of history, the casualty lists, the sterile reports, and the relentless, grinding reality of the trenches that these men actually lived through on the ground.
Part 1. Three Men in the Mud.
Picture this. It's late June 1916. Our three protagonists find themselves assigned the exact same stretch of a forward trench, just waiting for the devastating Somme offensive to kick off. They are staring at the exact same dawn, but they're processing it in three entirely different ways. Captain Sassoon, he reacts with this bitter, ironic anger aimed squarely at the out-of-touch generals. Lieutenant Owen is just consumed by this accumulating, unbearable grief for the young boys dying all around him. And Private Rosenberg, well, he approaches it with a flat, unhorrified resignation to the Earth's indifference. He's looking at the chalk and the mud through the eyes of an artist, simply noting that the ground, it really doesn't care who it buries.
Because, let's be real, the environment shaping their mindsets is a total nightmare. We're talking about fat rats scavenging unconditionally with the sheer confidence of property owners, rotting duckboards suspended over absolutely foul water, even a slumped corrugated iron sheet that eerily looks exactly like a sleeping man. And beneath all of it is that inescapable Picardy chalk. As Rosenberg acutely realizes, these ancient layers of chalk have zero opinions. They don't distinguish between officers and privates or between English and German. It is the ultimate leveler.
Part 2. The Arithmetic of Butchery.
11. Just 11. Think about that number for a second. That is the total number of men from Captain Sassoon's original company of 102 who actually returned from the assault at 0 hour. 102 went up, and after a massive 8-day British artillery bombardment completely failed to cut the German barbed wire, only 11 came back. They were ordered to walk in a straight line, at a steady pace, directly into uncut wire, fully weighed down with all their kit. Why? Simply because out-of-touch commanders decided the plan could not be changed. It's just a staggering, tragic failure of military planning.
And the psychological toll on the survivors, specifically Wilfred Owen, was just devastating. Survival wasn't just a physical act. It was this agonizing mental sequence. First, he had to just keep walking forward, right past dying men, like young Private Tanner, who was literally begging for his lieutenant. Second, he had to physically survive the machine-gunned, cratered ruins of no man's land. But it's the third step where the real haunting begins. Owen had to compose 21 what he called necessary fictions, letters to the mothers of his dead men. He realized the terrifying skill of grief. He was forced to lie to these mothers, telling them their sons died bravely and painlessly, just to spare them the agonizing truth of how they were actually slaughtered.
So, while all this horror is happening, the report of death bureaucracy back home reduced this mass slaughter to simple checkboxes: cause, location, body recovered. The public forums completely ignored the reality on the ground. I mean, there was no checkbox for ordered to walk at a steady pace into uncut wire because it could reasonably be asked of them. The paperwork just neatly erased the human horror.
Moving into Part 3. Crafting the Cure.
By 1917, Sassoon and Owen are recovering away from the front lines. They meet at the Craig Lockhart Hospital in Scotland. And here, the hospital's lead doctor, Dr. Rivers, does something incredible. He defines their trauma as nervous exhaustion. He calls it an engineering failure of an overloaded machine, rather than a moral failing or cowardice. This is a massive reframing. He doesn't look at shell shock as a weakness or a lack of bravery, but as the literal, inevitable mechanical collapse of a human nervous system that's been subjected to continuous, unbearable bombardment.
While they're at the hospital, Sassoon kind of takes Owen under his wing, and we see their poetic philosophies start to merge and contrast. Sassoon's poetry, it makes the reader furiously angry at the generals. But Sassoon realizes Owen's poetry is doing something different. It makes the reader grieve the human cost. He mentors Owen, telling him to trust the unbearable facts to evoke pity. Don't tell the reader how to feel, just show them the horrific truth of those necessary fictions. And all the while, they both keep up a correspondence with Rosenberg, who is still out there laboring in the mud. Rosenberg's letters provide this stark, unsentimental inventory of the war's indifference, keeping them both grounded in the truth still happening on the front lines.
Part 4. The Final Year.
The end of the war in 1918 was preceded by just a rapid, brutal succession of tragedies. In March, Isaac Rosenberg is killed in the fog during the German Spring Offensive. Months later, Wilfred Owen, who actually chose to return to the front because he felt he couldn't write honestly about the men from a safe distance, is killed crossing a canal on November 4th. Exactly 1 week later, on November 11th, the armistice is declared.
Let's just pause on Rosenberg's fate for a second. Because of the sheer chaos of the front, his body wasn't conclusively identified at first. When a grave was finally made for him, it was marked with 3 absolutely devastating words, believed to be. His death was recorded in the exact flattened bureaucratic prose he always knew would erase his individuality. The earth took him without distinction, exactly like he had always predicted it would.
And the tragedy of Owen's death, it's marked by an agonizing juxtaposition. The telegram announcing his death arrives at his mother's house at the exact same hour the church bells are ringing across the entire country to celebrate the armistice. It's this unbearable clash of clocks. You have the massive public celebration of peace happening at the exact moment of a mother's private, world-ending grief. The public war and the private war kept entirely different timing.
Finally, Part 5, The Survivor's Burden.
So the war ends, but Siegfried Sassoon is left alone as the sole survivor to curate the legacy of his brilliant friends. Decades later, as an old man, what remains is kept meticulously in a box. It holds their shared correspondence, Rosenberg's bullet-hole notebook with the sleeping shape, an unfinished sketch of a chalk quarry, and Owen's harshest, most unforgiving poetry drafts. You see, Sassoon spent the rest of his life fighting the public's desire to forget. He deliberately published Owen's hardest, ugliest truths. He knew, for sure, that choosing the softer, gentler drafts just to spare the reader's feelings would have been a massive betrayal of the men who actually died in that mud. He made absolutely sure the public saw the unvarnished reality.
So what does this all mean for us today? It leaves us with a final, provocative question. Does a war truly end when the guns stop, or does it live on in the arguments of the survivors? Through Sassoon's lifelong curation, the painful, undeniable truths penned by these soldiers outlasted the neat, indifferent paperwork of history. The men died, yes, but their noticing survived. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and always remember to look beyond the paperwork.